If AI can now produce content, write code, generate reports, and give advice at a professional quality, what is actually left that humans uniquely own? Most people would answer that with things like creativity or relationships. My guest today has a different answer. He says that a scarce resource is verified judgment, the ability to be publicly right on record before outcomes are known. And he argues that none of the systems we've built so far, not LinkedIn, not professional credentials, not blockchain, not even prediction markets, have actually produced that signal. They've all depended on it without building it, so he decided to build it. This is the Predictable B2B Success podcast, and today we're going deep on the infrastructure layer that the AI economy is missing and why getting this right matters for every founder, operator, and knowledge professional listening. My guest today has a pattern I've rarely seen in founders. He has spent his career at the exact moment when important systems break down, and he's been inside them when it happens. He was at the SEC when financial regulation was getting captured by the very interests it was designed to regulate. He was at Red Hat, one of the defining open source companies of its era, as chief of staff to the CTO, watching intellectual property law become a weapon against the developers who built the value in the first place. He went deep into blockchain and crypto at Ava Labs when that sector was still figuring out what it actually was for. And now he's building Quadron, which he describes as a system of record for human expertise in the AI economy, a way for individuals to own, protect, and get rewarded for their professional judgment as an asset they carry with them, separate from whoever employs them at any given moment. But what I didn't know before we spoke, and what you will hear today for the first time, is the personal experience that put all of this in motion for him. A moment involving his mother, a serious illness, and a healthcare system that had all the right information in the world, but no way to get it to the person who needed it most. Dan Pratl, welcome to the Predictable B2B Success podcast. Before we get into your company, the thesis, and any of that, I know you referenced a personal experience involving your mother's healthcare journey at the moment this idea crystallized for you. Can you take us there? What happened and what did that moment reveal about the system?
Yeah, sure, Vinay, and thank you for having me. So, I'll take you back to 2017. I had just started my first company, a crowdfunding company in the deep tech, med tech, research tech, whatever you want to call it, space. Things coming out of labs at universities, the innovation engines of the United States. The thinking there is that a lot of that deep tech exists beyond the time horizon of a VC or any traditional investor beyond the 10-year time horizon. So the idea is to get alumni back involved with their alma mater and bring down the check sizes, tell very emotive stories about the research, and connect it to their own, academic and professional backgrounds. So what that meant is that I was quite good at understanding how to look at medical research and where to go search for, the intersection for to be an advocate for somebody in my family. So that's where I was in 2017, and my mom got sick, had a series of autoimmune disorders leading to a GI issue, leading to a bowel resection, and we had to save her life. We had to get her into a trial. So, given my background, I went and looked at the state of GI medical research, looked at the trials available, and realized a lot of the information, even if centralized, was not robust, did not dynamically update, and relied a lot on medical jargon that you had to be a clinician yourself to really understand and to parse. Now, the clinicians did not have a lot of time to go and do the hunting. And the academics that were doing, the researchers that were doing the fulfillment of that obligation of centralization simply didn't think about what the clinician was doing and trying to have good bedside manner, et cetera. And you realize there was this vast chasm between the two. You had academics and researchers on this side, clinicians on the other side, with no system to surface the information at the right time. And it's because the systems at play are obligations. Individuals are obliged to provide that information to centralize it, but it doesn't benefit them personally to keep it updated, to maintain it, to keep it robust. And clinicians, again, having good bedside manner, don't have the time to go back and do that hunting. So individuals like myself who are trying to be advocates have to fill in those blanks as non-clinicians, as confronting doctors in a very uncomfortable way. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if there was a system that could use incentives to enable individuals doing the work to benefit from surfacing this information to the individuals who need it most. Now, this was obviously far before the transformer paper and all of the evolution we've seen in the AI space to this point. Now, imagine a system that is benefiting from how human psychology operates with incentives involved, and you had a networked intelligence that is enabling individuals to surface that information exactly where it is and to benefit directly from it. That is one use case that I foresee for Quadron in the future.
Brilliant. You went to law school, you spent years at the SEC in regulatory work. Most founders with that background build compliance tools or legal tech. What happened in your thinking that made you say the problem isn't the rules, it's the underlying infrastructure that produces trust in the first place?
Well, I spent a lot of time around engineers first and foremost. So that legal brain very quickly changed into not an engineer, so I wouldn't say that, but more of a technical brain, started looking at problems in a materially different way. And then I got to be around the crypto folk, call them degens, call them what you will. But I got to go through DeFi Summer, got to go see the token mindset, watch people get digital religion, watch people respond to narratives and the self-interest that tokens really motivated, connected with and motivated. And I got to see that, man, human incentives in psychology drive a lot of the world far more effectively than top down obligation, compliance related activities. And now it's my opinion that given the velocity of AI and the world that we're moving and also performing blockchains, we're at this point where we can build and program incentives into every layer of the stack, so to speak. So you don't have, for example, in open source, individuals maintaining repos purely through obligation or fascination. We can actually do remuneration and compensation effectively so that there are more robust and resilient infrastructures in place to maintain digital infrastructure far better than we do today.
Would you say that was the same case while working at the SEC? I wonder, did working inside the SEC show you that something that most observers on the outside can't see?
Yeah, when I was at the SEC, I was also quite young and wet behind the ears, however you want to call it, and got to see the revolving door. Three couple of months time, individuals leaving to become GCs at private equity shops. I understand regulatory capture quite well at this point, but that really showed me that the mechanisms that were birthed of a traumatic experience, the Great Depression in the United States, those mechanisms had far outlived their mission, and hell, we had gone through the Great Recession at that point, and that just further clarified and amplified that point that the mechanisms, again, were really not programmed in a way to do the thing that their creators actually intended them for.
And you've said that AI is commoditizing knowledge and the execution of knowledge, and that expertise, judgment, the deployability of that judgment is now the scarce resource. I want to push on that. Every generation has said the previous layer of work was being commoditized. Before AI, it was outsourcing. Before that, it was software. Expertise has always found a way to remain valuable. Why is this time structurally different, not just faster, but different in kind?
Yeah, well, the last time this happened, outsourcing, it just further clarified the value of expertise. So I would say that we've been on this journey towards the clarification of expertise. And now those at the top, the consultants, the individuals that were charging hundreds of dollars per hour, are now absolutely within the target space. And that's, I think, the first thing that is materially different. We're not attacking the bottom anymore. We're not attacking the low hanging fruit, so to speak. We're going right for the top. High quality noise is absolutely abundant. Knowledge and its execution to create high quality signal, output, artifact, whatever you want to call it, is now a daily norm. Individuals are using these tools and frontier models to sound like an expert with little to no training involved, which means that those individuals at the top of that pyramid I mentioned, again, squarely in target. So this is materially different. And there's a step further than that. Analysis of dissimilar things was something we could never do effectively, even with experts. So take a step back. Think about intellectual property. Having two patents, even in the same space, used to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to effectively analyze, scrutinize, and then enforce. Because you can't monetize patents; it's a monopoly on the enforcement action. Now we can rapidly analyze those two patents in the same space, materially different, and do it for pennies on the dollar. The cost of analysis is absolutely cratered, meaning again, those individuals at the top of the pyramid squarely in the target space. And who knows where it goes from here.
Absolutely. You've said that LinkedIn, professional credentials, blockchain, and prediction markets all depend on credibility signals, but none of
Mhm.
them actually produce those signals. That's a strong claim about systems with billions of users and decades of adoption. Walk me through the specific structural reason each one fails, and where exactly in the mechanism does it break down?
Yeah, so I'll go at LinkedIn. We'll call social networks. They're a reflection of the prestige networks that really undergird most of the non-technical spaces in the world, and that's a vast majority of the spaces. So LinkedIn is essentially a number of individuals going online, benefiting from their credentials, their totems of competence. I went to this school, I worked at this company for X years. You see X Facebook, X Google, et cetera. And it is simply allowing the individuals that already have credentials to autogenically build upon that foundation to give them the biggest megaphone. So individuals younger than those individuals do not have any access to that credibility. Arguably, it's on the other side of a 15-year career if they survive that long in this environment of layoffs and what you see in the United States. And it locks a number of people out that are credible that simply don't have those credentials. So LinkedIn is a reflection of the prestige networks that it rides upon. Academia, Fortune 500 institutions. It doesn't actually speak to your efficacy, doesn't actually speak to your progress, your contributions to progress, which is the point of being employed, the point of, outside of getting compensated, it's the point is to hire quality people that give a damn. And that is not what LinkedIn is doing. LinkedIn is rewarding people with the biggest megaphone that have the credentials to own that megaphone and have the easiest access to it. Now, if you look at new entrants into the space, which is now LinkedIn with agents this time, same thing. They're doing the same thing. They're riding on antiquated prestige networks that are giving individuals that have most efficient access to credentials and totems of competence the easiest access to that megaphone. Now, even look at LinkedIn. I said that's just for the non-technical realm. Let's look at the technical realm. It's still about how many people have utilized your stuff and liked your stuff, stars on GitHub. That again is a proxy for competence. It's not competence itself. It's not how you decomposed a problem, how you looked at reconciling the series of problems to get to it. What was the hazing process like on your journey? Arguably now it's just I took this AI easy button and here's an output. There's nothing along the way to tell you the story. It's a series of radar pings with nothing in the middle. There's nothing capturing the interstitial moments to tell the story of you and why you're competent and what you learned through a series of failures or successes.
There's a phrase you use, mechanism outliving intention. The idea that the system's mechanism survives past the purpose it was designed for. You've lived that across your whole career. Walk me through what that actually looks like using one specific example, if you could, from your past in real detail, and then tell me where Quadron sits in that pattern.
Yeah, so I'll give you two.
Okay.
So let's go with open source. I was there when social coding, somebody maintaining a repo sitting on their couch, being part of a community to take on an 800-pound gorilla like Microsoft, that was still really possible. It was this, cathedral versus the bazaar, the bazaar being a true marketplace of ideas. The best ideas win, meaning those communities that are doing the most productive or most efficient thing actually get the most eyeballs, meaning they get the most support, meaning they're the most efficient at solving problems. I got to see that go from what it was intended to be to real corporations realizing they can just capture it because there's no remuneration structure with an open source by throwing large amounts of money at communities to pick winners, so to speak. So it became an incredibly productive and efficient outsourcing tool, right? Outsource development tool. Identify a winner, throw money at it, call it a day. Out open source pretty much outlived the intentions of its founders because they looked at the intellectual property landscape and said, you can't monetize code this way anymore. Let's open source everything, truly, like GNU, Apache licenses. And that's that. That was the fatal flaw of open source and remains the fatal flaw of open source is that individuals have to feel obliged or be interested enough to continue to maintain. So that's one example. I got to see that in real time, and it's unfortunate, but I think it's pretty obvious and it was foreseeable. The second one is, excuse me, crypto. You have the Satoshi paper, right? Coming out of the Great Recession, decentralization, disintermediation, own something without having to pay fees to an intermediary doing nothing for you, really. Very much something that resonated in the post Great Recession, Occupy Wall Street era. Fast forward a decade, and its token go up, right? Staking. There's none of the greater tomorrow, better tomorrow language. It is just individuals optimizing for their own self-interest by holding tokens and continuing to hold those tokens, hoping that that token number go up. That's really not doing the fulfilling the intentions of the creators. Again, largely foreseeable because tokens in and of themselves don't actually do anything of material benefit to society. It's just a speculation machine.
And could you tell us where Quadron would really sit in that pattern?
Oh yeah, the thing you asked me and that I forgot. Yes. So it's my opinion that AI and blockchains come together not to do the same old thing, but faster this time. It's my opinion that it unlocks real new value that was previously inaccessible, unreachable, not utilizable, ineffable. And that is a new asset class. And it's the asset class that's the invisible force and value driving the economy. Expertise, judgment, taste, insight, whatever you really want to call it, it's fine. What Quadron does is it says to turn that into an asset class, to utilize the superpower that is the rapid analysis that afforded us by foundational models, you have to connect that to blockchains because individuals have to expose their information repeatedly and dynamically in the same way to allow AI to rapidly analyze it. It has to be in the individual's best interest to continue to do this, or they'll feel like they're being surveilled. They'll feel like they're training their replacements. That's something we hear a lot of today. So, what Quadron does is it says, you have the scarcest resource in the world. You are valuable and you should be compensated for that value. And here's how we're going to do it. Takes a little bit from the open source ethos, expose your ideas, help others. It takes a little bit from crypto, decentralization of value. You should own and through a few fully disintermediated approach, own your value. It should be portable with you. It shouldn't be tied to any platform. Quadrant's taking the goodness of a lot of these technologies, bringing it together and programming every layer of the stack so it's self-reinforcing, it's iterative, and it becomes more robust over the course of time.
So, is Quadron designed to outlive its own intention, or is the architecture specifically meant to prevent that?
Yeah, absolutely. Quadrant is intended to outlive me, anybody else. It's building a couple of things that I think are truly novel. First off, it's giving us a new intellectual property system to protect our secrets and monetize those secrets without giving away the good stuff. It's also intended to allow other individuals to benefit from our progress, stand on the shoulders of giants and be compensated for it. This is why programming incentives is so critical because we don't do that naturally. That's why programmable tokens are so valuable because it aligns human beings to think outside of themselves in a fully decentralized ecosystem. Building a network of communities that is not centralized like a Reddit requires that kind of fiber, that programmable fiber. And that's the whole point of Quadrant is to help build that programmable fiber, reinvest into individuals and have individuals reinvest into themselves and others.
I want to understand the actual product, not the
Mhm.
pitch. If I'm a senior cardiologist and I'm using Quadron for the first time, walk me through exactly what I do. What is a lens? What is a quad? What is a claim in the world? And at the end of that session, what do I have that I didn't have an hour earlier?
Yeah. So you're a cardiologist. That's actually a pretty good one. You're a cardiologist. You are working on cases. Those cases are sensitive, HIPAA compliant information, things you can't talk about, things you can't leak. You need to protect the information that's sensitive while also be able to talk about yourself without talking about yourself, because then we're just at LinkedIn again. The idea here is that you do your work on the day to day, wherever you do your work in new fangled chat tools, agent tools, or maybe more antiquated workflows. Quadrant sits in the background. and just captures the valuable insights at those interstitial moments as you move from one tool to the next, as you make a decision, as you decide an artifact is done. As you move along through your day, that information gets accumulated. It gets captured in the background. When it's time to utilize that information productively, you can actually reference it, right? So it's thinking about you today as a productivity tool. And then over the course of time, let's say you go a couple of years into the future, you now have that day-to-day activity compounded into a corpus of knowledge about you and how you think and what you do and how you resolve problems. So you have today and tomorrow and all of the moments in between. It's a productivity solution that allows you to not talk about yourself, but have a system tell stories for you. So when it's time to go look for the new job, you can protect and preserve that sensitive information and not leak that while telling provable stories of your journey through time. Now, personally, that means that you actually have those things we call lenses. They are the expert assets, and those lenses can be redeployed however you see fit. You can monetize them directly. You can just show them as proof of progress. You can turn them into an API layer and start turning yourself into a series of agents. But also, when you go and talk to others, they can click through the story that you want to expose. Now, critically, you get to tell your own story. Not everything is out there on your profile that you've ever done that you ate a sandwich at 11:36 a.m. on, September 14th. That's not what we're talking about here. You choose the journey you want to show, and then you allow individuals to go into how you decompose problems, why you did this versus that. That information is simply not available any other way unless you're using a tool like Quadron that has an ensemble approach, cross-model, multimodal, allowing individuals to not have to manually upload things to each tool, but allows it to compile and then you revisit it when necessary. Now, you mentioned one thing about claims. It's our opinion that prediction markets are quite valuable, but not in their current form. Right now, it's speculative activity by another name. You go to a place to bet on things you don't control with people you don't know and whose backgrounds you don't understand. It's a very efficient way to lose money due to asymmetric information. I won't call it what it is for a number of reasons, but I think we know what it is. What if we inverted that model? It's not a place that you go to, but opportunities that come to you. Individuals right now suffer, especially younger individuals, suffer from a lack of legitimacy and credibility. Again, because it's on the other side of 15 years of a career because of the way our systems are currently composed and how we look at value and structure it. What if individuals said, I'm smart and I know it and I'll bet on it and I can prove it? Well, you put your hand up in the world that you're convicted about something. You create a resolvable opportunity at some point in the future, and then that is a signal for a system to identify others based on their backgrounds and expertise and credible proof to come and agree, disagree, and actually engage with you using speculation as the language of conviction. Well, now we've structured collaboration. We've driven novelty because human beings are the keepers of creativity, imagination, and novelty, and allowed individuals to actually have conversations using speculation that isn't using asymmetric information in a mercenary way. Actually, the asymmetry is the point. It's a series of experts working in a closed environment on claims that they are the only ones that can truly take a stand on and know what they're talking about. So we think credibility markets is the next era of prediction markets, but it's turning them as they're currently composed on their head.
So how is it actually capturing relevant moments?
Yeah, so we use a number of different methodologies, approaches. Think about it. You have a desktop, you have a browser, you have a mobile device, you have an app store. There have to be different approaches and layered approaches, and then a metacognition that kind of sits as an abstraction across all of them. That's trained. The harness is trained in a certain way at certain points, and as it captures to think about you, where you are in your career, what you're doing, what you're likely to need. Day one, it's not going to be great because a lot of these tools aren't. But over the course of time, future you, which is what we call our metacognition, gets to know you, gets to understand what you're doing and why, gets to know how you think. Over the course of time, it starts not finishing your sentences, but pretty close, giving you unique insights and helping you say smart things at the right time. I remember my first boss said to me, all of this is about saying smart things. And I've never forgotten that because it's such a simple idea. And that's what we've trained it to do is help you say smart things at the right time.
So is this a one-time setup or a daily practice?
That's a great question. It depends on what you want it to be. If
Okay.
you are young and, again, striving for legitimacy and credibility, it behooves you to make it a more frequent engagement. We don't want you critically. I think this is an interesting point. We don't want you coming to Quadron all the time. The point is that it exists in the background and you use pre-existing conversational interfaces, surfaces that you're familiar with, WhatsApp, Telegram, SMS, to engage with it. You're not on a platform all the time. It needs to be in network, in workflow, and passive. It needs to show up and expose itself at only the times when you need it. But you're right, absolutely. The more hungry for credibility you are, the more you should be engaging with the system.
Right. So you structure everything in Quadron as a trade secret and charge $1 to create legal protection. Walk me through the actual legal mechanics, if you could. What does the $1 payment create? What standing does it give to me if someone misappropriates my expertise? And has that been tested?
Yeah, so the dollar was just an example. Like that's not how that works.
Okay.
So trade secrets are just a superset, if you will, of secrets. We keep everything as a secret. Now think about, again, using another pyramid, the intellectual property system as a journey to the most effective protection that we have, which again is a monopoly on enforcement. We'll call it that. You have secrets at the bottom, which is just the stuff inside of our heads that nobody else knows. A trade secret is now putting a business lens on it. I can share that with you for consideration for a business purpose. That's the rough definition of it. And then you can utilize that and I can enforce it in action against you if you leak it. If I continue to maintain that secret. If I leak that secret, then I have no enforcement action against you. You can do whatever you want with it. What we've done is we've created a system that everything is kept a secret. You can efficiently and effectively create trade secrets, which is just a business arrangement for you to utilize my expertise or whatever I'd like to share with you. And then because there's full auditability all the way to the headwaters of my idea, I can show that if there was a violation or some malfeasance, who did it, when, and that I actually kept the secret. So it's more efficient enforcement. This is hypercritical because today trade secret enforcements are hugely expensive. You have to run an evidentiary record against a counterparty that's actively trying to obfuscate, right? Like, so that's why attorneys are, first off, they spend a lot of time on them because they are so very expensive. What if we could collapse the cost of enforcing trade secrets by having everything tracked, traceable? That's what we're intending to do. Trade secrets become a scalable proposition and it becomes a privatized arm of the intellectual property regime. It also allows you to maintain your secrets from prior art search, et cetera, so you can continue to on the path to patenting if you'd like. So you can actually monetize trade secrets prior to patentability because you're maintaining the secrets and you can show it. So we think this is a highly flexible intellectual property approach for the AI era, where things are moving so rapidly that the patent system simply can't keep up. Now, this is, I think, is very interesting. Director Squires at the USPTO said that the courts can't effectively adjudicate all patent claims in the future. It's just not possible any longer, given AI doing what it's doing, the velocity of potential claims. You are having to go back, they are having to go back and look at the processes, where information came from, where was it munged by a model, who had it. So all of that auditable record we're creating is actually critical to patenting something in the future. So we've tried to reinforce the system as it exists today while creating a new system that's more suited to the AI era.
Why a trade secret structure rather than copyright?
Well, because copyright is still a place that you have to go to file, right? And then again, you get into an enforcement action, right? If you look at the way the intellectual property system is written into our Constitution, one could argue that's the point of the intellectual property system, is to enrich attorneys. As a former attorney, I can say I understand, but given this era and the velocity of quality and just enabling quality individuals to do quality work, there needs to be a decentralized, efficient, effective approach. And there simply isn't one today.
Okay. And legal protection, there's a charge for it. Could you give us some numbers around that?
Yeah, we're still percolating on the numbers
Okay.
around this. We have an enterprise side, which is kind of baked in. We have an individual side that's a la carte. What we're finding is that individuals are very cost sensitive, no surprise there. And it's really going to be industry by industry. And we're still trying to discern exactly what number for which industry, what policies to impress upon those. Because if you think about it, you're in a regulated space, medical space generally, there's a whole bunch more to consider than there is in, say, some if you're working in tech, you know. So we are still figuring that out in its early days.
Okay. On attribution, you say individuals carry proof of their expertise separate from organizational ownership. That directly challenges how most companies think about intellectual
Mhm,
property. If I'm a CTO and my team is generating knowledge inside Quadron, does that
mhm.
belong to the individual or to the company? And how does this
Well,
play out in an enterprise sale when procurement and legal start asking questions?
yeah. So it's a great question, and it really depends. And it depends on whether the knowledge was created at the company or did you hire that person for their knowledge. So think about it. You have spent 15 years in your career and you go to a place. Why did they hire you at a higher price point than a junior individual? It's because of your expertise. We've just never had an efficient way to evaluate it. So they've sent you through 6 rounds of interviews, you're employed, and when you leave, maybe they try to keep you from working for a competitor, depending on the state in the United States. But the point is that you get to leave and the artifacts, the objects get to stay. We now have these tools that allow us to structure and encode expertise like any other asset. And now we need to consider how it's effectively utilized, structured, and protected. If it's the case that you, the senior individual, were hired by a company for your seniority and that you're employed, you're bringing kind of your tools, so to speak, your lenses to them. You use them to make them to do good work at that institution, and then you leave, and they get to own your expertise. Then you're effectively a slave in a sense. That is not going to fly. I actually think that litigation is inevitable. We'll see that case somewhere because you can kind of see down the road. You encode these things, companies want to keep people there. People have, free will, they want to leave. That litigation in some form is somewhat inevitable. I'd suggest that versioning of expertise is critical to solve that problem. So, Vinay, let's say that you have V1 to V7 that you developed of a particular lens, your expertise artifact, and then you get employed by a company. Versions 8, 9, and 10 were developed under the auspices of that company, and then you leave. They will have access to versions 8, 9, and 10 because it was developed on their, on their dollar. But you get to keep the rest of them and you can reference those, right? This is why the flexibility of modularizing expertise and making it decoupled from the artifacts that it creates is so powerful. It's very similar to the notion of, abstraction, right? Virtualization, creating applications totally decoupled from hardware. We're doing the exact same thing with expertise, allowing individuals to keep what's theirs and organizations to protect what they've created.
So when procurement and legal
Yeah.
get involved,
Mhm.
regardless of whether it's a sale or something else, how easy would it be for them to separate issues in a clear sense in order to get an accurate picture of what's actually happening within an organization, especially an enterprise organization?
Yeah. So B2B is quite interesting. At this point in time, they're in a bit of CIOs are in a bit of a reactive crouch to AI, or IT has the AI remit generally, right? It's very early days for them, and they don't know where to go. They hear, let's go with Claude, let's go with another foundational model, or perhaps don't use any and use our own private instance. And what we're seeing is that you have to help them understand that institutional AI solutions, first off, are not going to look like a chat interface because that's a private side quest tool. It allows individuals to go off at a million miles an hour and not integrate their solutions effectively. And if you're going to have institutional AI that doesn't look like individual chat, and that modality is going to be materially different, it can't feel like a top-down obligation. You can't feel like surveillance. And that means you have to have some type of motivating incentive layer that simply doesn't exist today. So it's a rewards program, bringing back the token component of this. It's a rewards program for doing the right thing by your organization and reinforcing your own criticality to the organization and your reputation, right? So you mentioned portability a moment ago. Unlike a platform like LinkedIn that you have to maintain, and if you disappear from LinkedIn, you are essentially gone, or Upwork or Fiverr, where your reputation is associated with this platform, Quadron's fully yours. It's a decentralized, portable credibility infrastructure, reputation layer that follows you wherever you go. You can't get rid of it unless you want to because it's fully yours. Procurement and the enterprise generally have to catch up to this kind of this next wave of development. This new system architecture of utilizing AI and rewarding individuals for it is newfangled. It really wasn't necessary until about 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's arguably the most critical infrastructure layer that remains outstanding because verification of who's doing what, where they came from, what that means, it can't come top down. It has to be a bottoms up activity. It has to operate like a market. Hence why Quadron is creating an asset class in the market infrastructure to make it more effective and be able to scale.
I'm just wondering if there have been issues as yet, or you foresee issues wherein there becomes a dispute between who did what, and the being able to verify
Mhm.
who is in the right and who is in the wrong, because if the inputs are based on a person's experiences in a day or over a period of time, then is there a chance of perhaps exaggeration, if I could use that word,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
being
yeah.
entered into Quadrant?
Yeah, so we are not in the business of adjudication. We don't intend to pick winners, pick losers, say right, say wrong. What we can do is create strong paths to remediation. And you've probably heard this before because this episode's been seen before. This is just GitHub. This is GitHub for expertise. That's what Quadrant, it's another way of thinking about Quadrant. GitHub does not enforce. It does not say that you can't do that. You can do what you'd like with your expertise and the artifacts, but we also allow organizations to have very clear paths for remediation. If somebody has leaked information, we know who, we know where, let's pull it back. We can alternatively, at a later date, we've thought about this, program in slash it, which means that there are negative consequences for certain behaviors. That is a great incentive to not do certain things. We haven't done that yet because that's a little bit further down the path. But the idea here is that we take a private and then a private enterprise and then a personal realm. We allow individuals to work with sensitive materials, in that case, code, in our case, intellectual property, be it expertise or artifacts. And we allow individuals to optimize for their own self-interest with an option to enforce the right thing that reveals itself over the course of Quadrant working. We can actually program that. That's the whole programmable incentives component of this and utilizing a token.
Right. Let's say you've got 30,000 annual recurring revenue signed and 400,000 pipeline anchored around one large integrated delivery network, a major healthcare system. Now, healthcare is one of the hardest enterprise sales in existence, with long cycles, procurement committees, compliance reviews. Why healthcare first, and what made this specific organization willing to be the early adopter?
Do the hard part first because everything's downhill from there,
Fair
right?
enough.
I joke, but kind of not really, because intellectual property is most valuable in regulated systems. That is another answer for it. But really, if you take a step back and you think about intelligent entry points, Facebook did a hell of a job of telling a story about going after very smart people in very dense networks with legitimacy and prestige absolutely matter. That's R1 and R2 universities, Research 1, Research 2 universities. And those individuals in academia or otherwise, the vast majority of them, at least in STEM, matriculate to the private sector. That's a great Trojan horse for us. So we go after R1 and R2 institutions. We work in the tech transfer office, commercialization activities taking place, intellectual properties being monetized, licensed out to what? To medical institutions, to med tech devices. And those institutions are also hiring the individuals that will be using Quadrant as infrastructure. So there is a natural bridge from academia into the private sector. So it was hard. It was the right thing to do at the time. Don't know if I'd do it again. I'm joking, but it was hard. It's the right thing to do, but it's right because really the entry point here is young professionals and students who are most craving legitimacy and have least access to it.
Your 400K pipeline came from essentially three press placements and zero paid distribution.
Yeah.
Most founders at your stage are burning cash on ads and getting worse returns. What did you figure out about earned media that most founders miss?
Ads are I think a lot of people go to market. Well, first off, I'm going to say something that probably a lot of people don't like. Maybe they will. I think you should wait to start a company that you really care about until you have expertise in a particular realm, right? In a particular space. I had a very deep and robust network given my previous, startup and working in a number of spaces around this, that I could go and tap individuals to become potential ICPs and then first customers and then turn into something more. And that's exactly what happened. So I was able to identify people in my network, talk to them, get a sense of where I was absolutely wrong or if I was onto something, and then turn that into something else, and then find another customer or two from that. Ads aren't necessary when you're monetizing or you're trying to convert your personal network, which is what I did. From there, once you have a couple logos, you try to get into as large, a large media as possible. So do a couple press articles, get your name out there generally to be seen as, not crazy, like maybe akin to a leading light. And then and only then, when you've identified your ICP and you've really crystallized it and you understand how that ICP takes you into other places like regulated institutions, do you start thinking about putting money into media? And I haven't even really gotten there yet because then you get into regionality. Is it regional healthcare networks? Is it R2 institutions that don't have a medical school? Those are still questions I'm answering because I want to be able to speak with ads directly to the right person at the right time in the right place. And I'm not there yet, but I did know that personal network, big megaphone to de-risk you, not look crazy, and then you can fill in the gaps along the way.
So that 400K
Mhm.
pipeline is anchored on one deal. So if it closes, you've probably 13x your ARR overnight. If it doesn't, you're back to the same problem. So I'm curious, how are you thinking about that single deal concentration risk? And what are you doing to build more pipeline in parallel?
Yeah. So what I've realized is that we're early. I have a number of items in the in pipeline beyond just the 400K. It's been a while since we've spoken, so I probably should catch you up on some of the numbers. But there are a number of other institutions, but there's a pattern forming, which likens itself, in my opinion, to very much Slack, where Slack was. CIOs and VPs of innovation never said we need a synchronous communication channel. They said, why the hell do we need faster internet? Or excuse me, faster email. The people that utilized Slack and drug the enterprise with them were the individuals who were enunciating their pain through the adoption of Slack and utilizing it. And that's, I think, where Quadron's going to start. So we proved the hard part on the enterprise side. We've gotten the contracts and realized that institutional AI and the need for a new incentive layer, that is early. But what we can do today is we can go directly to employees and say, LinkedIn isn't helping you tell your story or capture and structure your expertise, is it? The answer is obviously no. You get the individuals. Individuals see value in it, and it becomes a institutional product that can be easily adopted through the individual communication of their own need.
You've you also have about 1,000 people on a consumer wait list who
Mhm.
found Quadron organically, no paid acquisition, and separately this large enterprise healthcare deal that we talked about. These are two very different customers. A healthcare system potentially paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, and individual professionals who haven't paid anything yet. Which one is the real business, and how do you avoid the B2B consumer split that pulls a lot of early stage companies apart?
Yeah, I think that we're entering a new era, and it's kind of like BYOD. It used to be a thing, and now it's just the way the world works because of VPNs and firewalls. I think the boundary between B2B and B2B2C and B2C is evaporating. You're seeing individuals that are able to build and maintain solutions quite rapidly using Claude Code, Codex, you name it. And that means that frankly, when you're selling to individuals always, because even in an organization, There's going to be an individual either utilizing your product alone in isolation, or they're going to be trying to replace it with something that they've built, right? So I think that the notion of B2B and B2C is kind of overlapping and collapsing at this point, and it behooves everybody building in an AI era to think about the individual first, irrespective of what t-shirt they're wearing at that particular point in time.
Would you say that the consumer side is also a bit of a Trojan horse into enterprise, or is it genuinely a separate trajectory?
No, it is the Trojan horse. Maybe I'm
Okay.
giving too much away there, but like that's the point. I think the thing that we mean startups, any company is what we're gonna fight is brew it at home. That used to be a thing that you only saw in tech. Why would I buy a CRM when I could build it? Or you name it, some type of developer tool. That was something that you only heard about in tech. And now you're seeing companies saying that, and they're in manufacturing or some heavy industrial. That's absolute craziness that we haven't experienced before. So we are in a new era, and we have to think differently about how we're providing value.
Great point there. You've said that VCs don't understand the vision, but customers get it immediately. I want to push on that because, in my experience, when a founder says investors don't get it, it's sometimes a real market education problem. And sometimes it's a signal that that the pain isn't acute enough to pay for it yet.
Mhm.
So, what do VCs actually say when they pass? Not the category of objection, the specific words.
Yeah, I will let you know when I hear when they have. No, joking. When I've spoken, so we raised a bit of money last year, and the one thing I learned through that experience is that people that have opinions on in this day and age on the investment side are small and diminishing all the time. And I think it's because of the massive transition that we're seeing. I think that traction is largely the only thing that matters in this day and age. And so individuals that are doing in the investment space, well, I don't really envy them given the amount of change that's taking place. It's my opinion that something like Quadron, be it us, be it someone else, is somewhat inevitable because it is the actualization of the value created by incentive structures and AI. It's unlocking the previously unstructured value that is driving our world. How that happens remains to be seen. It could be us, it could be something else. But I think that much like code wanted to be free and wanted to be accessible, expertise wants to be recognized and wants to be monetizable because that's why we get up and go to work in the morning is to be recognized and rewarded for doing good work. Now we can do it outside of a W-2 or a 1099 and a check every 2 weeks. We can do it in a fully decentralized way. I think expertise wants to operate in that manner where the world has gone already, and it's just somewhat of an inevitability.
Let's see if we can make this practical for people listening.
Mhm.
If I'm running a Series A B2B company, say 30 people competing in this space where AI is the leveling playing field, what is the concrete risk to me if my team's expertise is invisible? Not theoretical risk. What does a competitor with verifiable, portable expertise actually do to me in the market that I can't defend against?
Yeah, well, once matured and all grown up, that means you get to maintain your best people because you're rewarding them effectively. So your best people remain. I think that's the most important thing. Think about it. In the past, you had individuals that worked at proprietary software shops, and then you went to institutions that allowed you to talk about the work that you've done by using GitHub. A lot of institutions lost a lot of good talent to organizations like Red Hat because of the culture. The ethos of openness really drove really good talent away from more traditional proprietary shops. Same thing here. Now, like using Quadrant to create top line impact, that's not really the point. The point is that expertise is a new value structure that individuals want to utilize for their own benefit. Organizations want to not have organizational amnesia, not lose the expertise that generated revenue. You're enabling them to spin up new employees more efficiently, protect the insight that they've created rather than having, the product here and the thing that created it walk out the door. That's what Quadrant's for. It's rewarding the people that did the right thing, minimizing organizational amnesia, and spinning up new talent to allow it to to work more effectively across any model, any system that you or they would like to work with.
So this is primarily about talent retention, or is it competitive differentiation or something else?
Yeah, it's talent retention. I think that's the most. Think again. I always come back to open source because that's what I experienced. Talent retention. So a lot of the open source shops, I think it's well known at this point that open source did its value capture on open source was radically small, right, compared to a lot of the proprietary shops out there. The only way that those shops could compete with the larger was by allowing individuals the flexibility to keep what they created. And that's what Quadron's intending to do is to allow individuals to tell their own story and allow organizations to be, to benefit from those individuals actually documenting their work, which is not happening today.
Okay. And your Camp Network partnership announcement
Mhm.
includes a line I haven't been able to get out of my head. Camp proves what you made. Quadron proves your judgment about what was worth making.
Yeah.
I'd like to challenge that directly. Judgment is retrospectively obvious. We call it good judgment after the outcome is known.
Mhm.
Before outcomes are visible, all judgment looks a lot like opinion. How do you prove judgment before it's been validated? Isn't this fundamentally a hindsight tool?
Yeah, you're thinking about it the way the world works today because you're looking at it as similar to like sports, baseball, football. Sports in the 70s, there weren't that many analytics that were tracked. You had the score, obviously. You had sacks, and maybe you didn't have sacks. I forget when they actually started tracking them. You had rebounds, assists, you had a couple of things. And then the analytics revolution kicked off, and you went from just a couple pinpricks of light to vast constellations of information about these sports. And you realize none of them are outcome determinative, but they're very valuable to show you trends, to show you interesting insights that you wouldn't have previously captured about the game. We don't really have that for work today and expertise. You have, as you described, moments in time where you said this way or that, and only in retrospect are you seen as wise. Well, what about all of the things that you did in private? What about all those things that your boss didn't recognize that wasn't reflected in your bonus, reflected in your performance review? Those are totally not captured today. There has to be an information revolution that doesn't feel like surveillance or an obligation to use this tool. There has to be something that reinforces the criticality of the individual in an era where most people feel incredibly insecure. And that's what Quadrant's trying to kick off.
What would it look like for someone to go on record with a claim in Quadron before the outcome is known and then be wrong?
Yeah. So we use a pari-mutuel market structure, meaning that you put money into a bucket. You're not betting on other people. You're staking a claim. You have a bucket. You put tokens in the bucket. People can join you. People can bet against you. But it's not you against somebody else. It's you against the thing that you've said resolves one way or the other. It's our opinion that you don't want people betting their entire, token fortune on a claim. That is not the point. Speculation is not the point. Building credibility by turning speculation into a low risk habit is. So you take a position that has a resolvable claim at some point in the future, and then others, it's a conviction signal. Others take a side or agree with you. You've kicked off structured collaboration. And let's say that you're wrong. You don't actually lose that much because two things. First off, we don't want to drive people away and we don't want to incentivize that side of behavior, but you learn something in being wrong. Arguably, you learn more from being wrong. That's kind of the point of like the hazing process of education. And we want to capture that and document that and not make it low risk, not even really denigrate. The reason why there has to be any loss at all is because the pool has to optimize for a winner. So the winnings are slight. But the point here is that people, human psychology being what it is, want to be right, want to be seen as smart, want to be acknowledged as a thought leader more rapidly than 15 years of a career for working for somebody else that's monetizing your and then laying you off. That's what we're trying to lean into. This need for recognition in an era where we've never felt more insecure.
Okay, brilliant. Since we last spoke, I'd say when we last spoke, the gap between your current ARR and your 18-month target was 3.97 million. That's a 130 times growth requirement in 18 months. Now, I'm not asking you to justify the number. I'm asking, what's the single decision in the next 90 days that most determines whether you close that gap?
That's a great question. It are my that's a really good question because I was actually just thinking about that today. Sorry to like break, I
You're
just was
right.
thinking about that today. Yeah. And I realize what podcast I'm on, but I actually think leaning more heavily into the consumer side because consumers, let's think about it this way. Young people and their parents spend 10 plus billion dollars a year on trying to get into college and 30 plus billion dollars a year trying to get their first job. It's absolutely crazy numbers on the proving that I'm better than somebody else. This highly competitive, pressurized environment around going into college and getting out of college. Arguably, there's never more pressure in life than those two moments because, first off, you're young and you haven't experienced a lot of pressure. And also because there's so many people trying to fit through these small number of Harvard applicants getting in, small number of Goldman Sachs offers to get in there. That is a very isolated individual opportunity that we can pursue. So as much as the enterprise is the large enterprise contracts obviously make more sense because of the reason why anybody does enterprise contracts, the real short-term opportunity is in the pressure of young people feeling under the gun to achieve. And leaning in that direction is, I think, the 90-day really impactful decision that I'm making, actively making.
Okay, brilliant. The last question, and I'll frame it as directly as I can. You're building something that requires a real behavioral shift. Individuals need to think of the expertise as an asset they actively manage and protect rather than something they exchange for a salary. That's a cultural change. Could you make the case to the person listening right now who is not a crypto native, not an early adopter, not a technologist? Why should they start doing this today?
Well, you don't have to actively cultivate it like a garden, right? You can if you want to. The idea here is that we have these tools and everybody else has these tools, and nobody knows what anybody else is doing and if it's of quality or not. We are operating on a train in the middle of the night with no lights going in some direction, not knowing what the destination is, or who else is on the train with us. It's an incredibly insecure feeling, I think, that we all feel today about where these tools are taking us, what it means for our long-term careers, and how we can actually arm ourselves. You have people building enterprise SaaS at 3 a.m., and you have other people totally disconnecting. What Quadron says is you already have your expertise. Their scarcest resource in the world is your expertise. You already have it. You just need to structure it appropriately, and we can help you do that while you go about your day, while you do the things you already do. It's already inside of your head. Let us help you encode it and put it to work for you. We're not going to ask you to become a DeFi expert or to all of a sudden be very interested in crypto tokens. That's not the point. We're not going to ask you to download Claude Code or start slamming on the command line. That's not the point. The point is that we give you an infrastructure that starts telling the story that you previously didn't have access to and you certainly couldn't monetize. And as we tell your story, you start learning things about you, who you're going to become, and what you want to be as you grow.
What would you say is one thing someone could do this week to start thinking differently about their expertise?
Great question. I think that people need to start having different experiences than what they are today. So the one thing I've learned through this process is the most valuable people in the future are going to be individuals that have very brownfield adjacent experiences. So like you start over here, you have an experience over here, you have an experience over here. Because those vast number of varied experiences is where imagination and creativity are going to manifest as you work into the future. It's those things that are like the connective tissue that connect all of those. And that doesn't come if you stay at a job for 30 years. That comes from having different experiences because computers don't have imagination. It's very difficult for them to create something that looks creative. It has to be trained on your creativity. So the best thing that you can do is start having different and varied experiences to tell a very interesting story about why your judgment is so unique and therefore valuable.
Terrific. This has been very interesting, Dan. For those listening or watching and who want to know more, where would you recommend they head to? Is there a social media platform that they could connect with you?
Yeah, Quadron.tech is the company. I have my own website, Pratl, Pratl, my last name,
Yeah.
prattle.me. I'm on X at PrattleDan. Try to use it, don't use it as much as I should, but I'm always available via email, and you can find that at prattle.me.
Okay. We'll include links to that in the show notes. Dan, thank you so much for doing this.
Vinay, thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
No worries.